Happy Sunday, everybody. It's so good to be here with you again on a Sunday morning at church. I want to say a big hello to our online campus. Thank you for worshiping with us and joining us today. And hey, welcome to week 2 of the summer here at Highlands Church. And I hope you guys enjoyed your first week of small groups this past week. I know we did at our house and had a good time. So I hope you're enjoying that. Remember, you heard it in the announcements, it is not too late to get signed up. I would love for you to get in a group even for just the next couple of weeks. As we do life together this summer, I want you to be a part of it. And if you didn't get a chance to be with us last Sunday, we're in week 2 of a message series, and it's kind of a different one, but it's something we do from time to time. And we're taking one book of the Bible, and we're doing a book study on it. And so we're going to dig into the major topics and themes and characters and all the lessons that we can learn specifically as we go through this one book of the Bible. And so the one we're looking at for the next couple of weeks is the book of Titus, a little book towards the end of your New Testament. We're going through the book of Titus for the next couple of weeks. And last week, if you weren't able to be with us, you can watch that message in our archives, but really just kind of had an introduction to the book of Titus and kind of looked at big picture perspective of what this book was. It is actually a letter that was written by the Apostle Paul, and it was written to a guy named Titus, who was a young leader that he had sent to help lead some churches on the Greek island of Crete. And really, we kind of honed in on that, the setting and the culture of ancient Crete, and how it was a big deal for the letter that he was writing. It was one of the keys to unlocking kind of the themes of the letter, was that they were in this immoral and ungodly culture there in Crete, and they were trying to have church, and they were trying to figure out how to live for Jesus, and Paul sent Titus to help them do that. And so we looked at some of the major themes that are in the book, and we pulled out a couple. And last week, the last one that we had was this idea that godly leadership plays a big role in being able to grow and impact the culture around us. That it's important to have godly leadership in place. And so today, this week, that's where we're going to be. We're going to be looking more at what was Titus's task that Paul gave him when he was in Crete specifically, and how did leadership play a big role in that. And that's where we're going to be. See, Paul left Titus in Crete to do 2 things. And you can find it right there at the beginning of the book of Titus. I hope you enjoyed reading it this past week on your own. But right there at the beginning, first few verses, you see the task that Titus is given. And we're going to read it to you. I'm going to show you this passage in Titus chapter 1, verse 5 through 9. We're going to read a few verses because this is going to be our foundation for today. This is where we're going to be kind of settling in and looking at what does godly leadership look like. But here's the task he was given. Paul says to Titus, "This is why I left you in Crete." Verse 5, "This is why I left you there, so that you might put what remained into order." You might put what remained into order. He said there's some chaos, there's some confusion going on in these churches. They don't really know they're not really doing it the right way, and they need some help. There's disorder, and our God is a God of order, right? Come on. And so Paul says, I need you, here's the first thing I need you to do. I need you to bring some order to what's going on in these churches, and to do that, I want you to do this, appoint elders. I want you to appoint elders, and elders are just leaders. They're church leaders in the church. And so he says, I want you to bring order. I want you to appoint leaders in every town as I directed you. And then he describes what those leaders look like. Here's what you're to look for in the leaders that you're going to appoint. He says, if anyone is above reproach, the husband of one wife, and his children are believers and not open to the charge of debauchery, I love that word, debauchery or insubordination. For an overseer, just another word for a church leader and elder, as God's steward, he must be above reproach. He must not be arrogant or quick-tempered or a drunkard or violent or greedy for gain, but he should be hospitable, a lover of good, self-controlled, upright, holy, and disciplined. And he must hold firm to the trustworthy word that he's been taught, so that he may be able to give instruction in sound doctrine and also rebuke those who contradict it. There was chaos, there was confusion, there was disorder in these churches in Crete, and Paul knew they needed some good leadership. A lot of this was happening because the leaders that were in place were corrupt and they were false teachers. We talked about that last week. And so he said, we've got to get rid of these old leaders and we got to replace them. We got to raise up some good godly leaders. Titus, this is what I need you to do, because a good leader can get everyone on the same path, everyone under the same vision, and everyone moving in the same direction. And Paul understood that the importance of identifying, raising up, developing, and empowering godly leaders, that this is how we're going to have an impact on the culture around us. That this is how we're going to be able to make a difference in the lives of not just us and within our church, but also outside of our walls. It all depends on having good godly leadership in place. In Highlands Church, we're no different. If Paul were to write us a letter today, he would say the same thing. We need more leaders. We need godly leaders. If we're going to have the impact that we want to have here within our church, but also within our community, we've got to have some godly leadership in place. I need to grow and develop as a leader. You need to grow and develop as a leader. We all need to do this because if we're going to do it, that's what it's going to take. If we're going to have the kind of difference that we want to have, we're going to make a difference in the lives of people, then this is what we're going to need. Because Paul understood that godly leadership can do a few things. It can unlock a few things when it comes to our impact. I would love for you to write these down today. The first thing that godly leadership can do is that it accelerates and increases impact. Godly leadership accelerates, so the impact that we want to have in our community and in our culture, having godly leadership in place helps us to do it faster, and it increases it. It does more. It helps us to do more. It increases our capacity for change, for impact, more than we could without it. I'm going to borrow from a well-known leadership expert, Dr. John Maxwell, to help kind of unpack these things real quickly. And, years ago, he wrote a book called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And I'm sure some of you in here and watching online may have read these, but really, he just kind of lays out these sort of innate truths. He calls them irrefutable laws that are true about leadership. And he would say that godly leadership accelerates and increases impact. Yeah, that's called the law of explosive growth. The law of explosive growth is what he would call it. And really, in a nutshell, the way that you can break that down is this. The law of explosive growth says to add growth, lead followers. But to multiply growth, lead leaders. Did you get the difference there? To add, so you can add people to what you're doing. Hey, in other words, we could fill this room if we wanted to just by collecting and adding followers to what we're doing. But if we want to multiply our impact, if we want to multiply our growth, if we want not just fill this room, but fill it for 4 different services, right? And I'm not talking about just church numbers. I hope you guys understand that, but I'm just using it as an illustration here. If we want to multiply what we're doing, then we've got to have godly leadership in place. And this was Paul's, this was his strategy. All throughout the New Testament, when you read all his letters, this is what he was doing. He identified and trained and developed and equipped young leaders. He gathered around him young leaders. He poured into them. He equipped them and trained them. And then he turned them loose. Because there was no way that Paul would have the time or the energy or the money to go back and visit all of the different cities and all the different towns and churches that he helped plant. There's no way that he will be able to go back and invest in the lives and check up on people and help disciple people and help them grow. There's not enough time. He was only one man. And so he knew, I've got to invest in some leaders around me. I've got to raise up some more godly leaders because they can multiply what I'm trying to do. They can multiply my efforts. And this is what Paul was telling Titus to do in Crete. He was teaching the same thing. Hey, just like I did with you, this is what you've got to do in Crete. He didn't send him, notice, he didn't send Titus to go and take over the church and do everything himself. No, he sent him to lead the church. And the first thing, he said, Titus, I need you to go put things back in order. I need you to help lead this church. And the first thing I want you to do is raise up some new leaders. Raise up some leaders. He understood it. And not only does godly leadership accelerate and increase our impact, but it does the second thing. It does this. Godly leadership helps sustain our impact. Sustains impact. Let me say it this way. To have impact, we must develop into godly leaders. But to have lasting impact, we must develop others into godly leaders. Like if I want to have an impact on the people around me, I got to get better as a leader. And that's true. And that's what we all need to do. But if I'm going to create impact that outlives me, man, I got to develop some other people into godly leaders. John Maxwell would call this the law of reproduction. The law of reproduction, that the most effective way to develop leaders is to mentor them, to bring them alongside you, to pour into them, to invest your life into them, and to train them. That as we are growing as godly leaders, we should always be looking for someone else that we can bring along with us. And that as we're growing and learning, we can then turn around and pour into them and help them to grow and learn. We should be always trying to reproduce ourselves and those leadership characteristics into someone else as we go along. Because if we do that, if we can get into the habit of reproducing leaders with us, then we'll step into the next one that John Maxwell would say, that is the law of legacy. And this is where things get fun. And this is where things get beautiful. And this is the point of leadership. The law of legacy is we have to help people grow so that they can achieve things without us. Like that's the whole point of it, is that we bring them along and train them and equip them so that when long after we're gone, the impact is still there. That they can make decisions. They can do the things that we would do without us having to be there. Parents, isn't this our goal with our kids, is that we have them for a while and we train them and we raise them up and we teach them things and we impart wisdom to them and we help them make decisions so that one day they won't need us anymore. They can go and live this life without us having to be there, and they can carry on and have the same kind of impact that we are trying to have with our life. I love this. He said, your greatest joy should not be found in reaching the top, but rather getting someone else to the top. I've heard Pastor House say it this way, and it always stuck with me, that a mentor of his told him, he said, be the significant factor in someone else's success. That's our goal as leaders. That's what godly leadership looks like, being the significant factor in someone else's success. In Highlands Church, I would love to do something right now. I would love to introduce you to somebody named Steve Terrell. Steve Terrell, or as I called him, Mr. Steve. You see, because I grew up in Alabama, and anybody who was about 5 years older than me was Mr. or Mrs., right? Can I get an amen from somebody? But Steve Terrell, I called him Mr. Steve. And you see, Mr. Steve, you will probably never meet him. You'll never know him. But he's having an impact and a legacy right here in Cumming, Georgia, right now. You see, when I was little, I grew up going to church, and on Wednesday nights when I was a kid, I'm talking elementary age, we had a couple of different things for the kids at church. We had something for the girls. It was called GAs, Girls in Action. Anybody tracking with me? You might know the GAs. And for the boys, we had RAs. The Royal Ambassadors. I still don't really understand what that meant, but we there. Man, we had a pledge and everything. Like every Wednesday night, we had RAs for the boys, and you know who was there? Mr. Steve. And he came and he would teach he would teach the RA class, and he would pour into us, and he would teach us a lesson, and we would pray together, and we would go through a little booklet together. And then what I really remember is that after we got done with all that, we would go outside. And we would play, and man, we would play football, and he would throw the football to us, and we would play baseball, and just countless hours of doing this. And can I tell you this? I don't remember, I'm ashamed to say this, I don't remember any of the lessons that he taught us. I know that they were about living a godly life and growing in our faith, and I know that they were about loving people and serving others. I know that they were those types of things. I don't remember any of the lessons. I remember the awkward prayer times because you got a bunch of 8, 9-year-old boys like not wanting to pray, right? I remember those things. But you know what I do remember? I remember every football that Mr. Steve threw to me. I remember every pitch that he threw to me when we were playing baseball. I remember that he was there. And I remember that he poured into my life. And I remember that he made time away from his family even to be there for us and for me. And that stuck with me. And so now, because he poured into my life at RAs on a Wednesday night in Alabama, now today I serve as a student pastor here in Cumming, Georgia. And you know what, Highlands? Every teenager that I have a conversation with, every student who gives their life to Jesus, every time that I get a chance to minister to a young person, you know who's there with me? Mr. Steve. He's having a legacy in a place that he's never been to, in Cumming, Georgia, because he took the time to invest in, pour his life in, and help develop me when I was a little kid. He took the time to do it, and his legacy lives on. Now, the goal is to help others grow in godly leadership so that when we're gone, so that when they're outside of our sphere of influence, that people's lives are still being changed, that people are still being reached for Christ, that people are still growing. It's this idea of generational leadership and a legacy of leadership. And here's what I love that Paul puts in here. You know where this is supposed to start? I love when this stuck out to me already. You know where this is supposed to start? This idea that leadership production is supposed to start in our own homes. Notice that in that list of qualifications that we read in the beginning of Titus about what a godly leader looks like, Titus chapter 1, verse 6, the first thing he says is if anyone is above reproach, the husband of one wife, and his children are believers and not open to the charge of debauchery or insubordination. Paul said, Titus, when you're looking for these leaders, when you're looking for them, the first thing I want you to look at is their home. Are they leading their home well? Is their family in order? And I'm not saying they have to be perfect. Your kids don't have to be perfect. Your marriage doesn't have to be flawless. But are they leading? Can they lead their own home? Because Highlands Church, your greatest influence is under your roof. Your greatest ministry, I've heard it said this way, your greatest ministry has your last name. And can I say this to the parents out there? I get to work, like I said, with your middle school and high schoolers, okay? I'm pleading with you, I'm begging you. You need to be the greatest influence in your teenager's life. You, mom and dad, you've got to be it. They need you to be, even if they don't know it, you have got to be the greatest influence. It can't be somebody on TikTok. It can't be somebody in Instagram. Hey, it can't even be a coach or a teacher. And those are great people to have around you. They need those people in their lives. Hey, it can't even be their student pastor. It's got to be you. The greatest legacy you can have is right in your own home. And Paul said, that's the first place I want you to look. But it goes beyond just our families. It's this, like I said, it's this idea of generational leadership that, and we don't have time to read all the verses today, but in chapter 2 of Titus, if you notice that as you're reading this week, he starts out with a couple of verses about, he categorizes the people in the church, older believers and older men and younger men, older women and younger women. And he talks about this idea of generational leadership, that the older men should be setting an example and helping the younger men see what it looks like to live a godly life, and that the older women should be teaching and training the younger women and how they can live for Jesus in this culture and lead their families and all those things. It's this generational leadership model. And what I love about our church is we've got all the different generations represented among us. I love that about our church, but how are we doing with generational leadership, Highlands? That's the question that I would ask. Pastor Hal mentioned it a couple of weeks ago that there's a problem in our society that we're seeing way too much peer-to-peer mentoring. And those can be a good thing. It's not all a bad thing. But if we're struggling with something, why are we going to somebody who's in the same season of life as us? We can go to them for encouragement, absolutely. We can go to them for prayer, for support, all of those things. But we got to find somebody who's been through it and maybe even made a mistake going through it, that then they can help us. When we're looking for wisdom, there's got to be generational leadership. And this is what I would ask to the older believers, and I'll leave that category open to however you want to define if you're an older or younger believer. To the older believers, who are you pouring into? Who have you identified within our church? Who have you identified that you want to invest in them? Maybe you see some potential in somebody. Maybe you see a young married couple that reminds you of yourself 10, 15, 20 years ago. I don't know what it is, but have you identified someone? Because I would make this request to the older believers in our church. Speaking on behalf of my generation, I'm on the tail end of the millennial generation. We're not always the best at asking for help. And we don't always do a good job of seeking out wisdom from the right places. So please do me a favor and do us a favor and come reach out to us, please. Find someone that you can invest your life in. And listen, you don't have to know everything. You don't have to have every answer. You don't have to have the Bible memorized. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to live your life in a way that's worth watching. And here's the thing. You don't have to know everything to give to them. Just open your life to them. Becca and I have a couple in our church that does this, especially in the area of parenting. You know what they do? They just invite us over for dinner. That's it. They invite us over. They let us into their lives. They let us behind the scenes. And that's all we're asking. That's all we need. That's all I'm asking of you. Hey, could you be a Mr. Steve for somebody in our church? And I would even go so far as to do this, an unapologetic, shameless plug for our kids' church and our student ministry. We need you. We need you to be somebody. We need you to be Mr. Steve for somebody in our church. We need you serving in kids' church. I need you leading a small group for middle school boys. I need you pouring into the lives of some high school. We need it. Have you identified somebody? Who are you pouring into? And then to the younger believers, who are you watching? Who are you learning from? Hey, I know I just asked them to seek us out. Don't make them seek us out. Don't make them seek you out. Go find somebody who's living a godly life and who has the future and a family that you want, that you see attractive, that you see good things in, and place yourself under them. And can I just say this? When you do, don't talk. Just ask questions and listen. Find somebody who's a season ahead of you in life and place yourself under them. Ask them out to lunch. Do something. Place yourself under. We've got to model this generational leadership. And can I tell you the legacy and the lasting impact that it can have in our church and our community? It's worth it. It's worth the time. It's worth the investment into young leaders. And so the last thing I want to leave you with is, how do we do this? What does godly leadership look like? And how do we grow in it? And I think that from that same passage of scripture we started out in, there's a couple different truths about leadership that we can learn. But let's revisit the passage first. And this is not meant to be an exhaustive list, but we can learn a lot from it. And this is what Paul says a godly leader should look like. He says, if anyone is above reproach, the husband of one wife, his children are believers, not open to the charge of debauchery and insubordination. For an overseer, as God's steward, must be above reproach. He must not be arrogant or quick-tempered or a drunkard. He can't be violent or greedy for gain, but he's got to be hospitable, a lover for good, self-controlled, upright, holy, and disciplined. He must hold firm to the trustworthy word as he's been taught, so that he may be able to give instruction in sound doctrine and rebuke those who contradict. Now, right off the bat, when I read that list of qualifications, something sticks out to me. Something jumps out to me. And the first truth we can learn about godly leadership, write this down. Number one is that character is more important than ability. When it comes to being a godly leader, when it comes to growing in leadership, your character is more important than what you can do, than your abilities. Because this list of leadership qualities, it focuses on someone's character, not what they can do. Because skills and abilities can be taught, but character is formed over years and years. Notice that Paul didn't say to Titus, hey, go choose the most eloquent speaker, or the best singer, or the most popular person, or even the person with the most profitable business. No. He said, when you're looking for leaders, go find integrity and go find character. That's where you start, and that's what you're looking for. I love to say it this way, that God is more concerned with your character than your career. He's more concerned with who you're becoming than where you're going or even what you're doing. And we should be too. I try and tell this to our students all the time, especially the high schoolers. You know, they struggle as they're getting ready to graduate high school with what they're going to do. I don't know where should I go to college? What should I major in? And their whole world is wrapped around trying to figure out, what am I going to do with my life? And I try and help them understand, quit focusing so much on what you're going to do or where you're going to go, and spend time focusing on who you're going to become, on who you want to be. Don't focus on, one of the things is, I want to know what my calling is. I want to find my calling that God has on my life. And that's a noble thing. That's what we should be looking for, our calling. But I tell them, don't focus on finding your calling, develop your character, and your calling will find you, right? And you know, just let me speak to the young people real quick. You know, there's only one verse in the Bible that talks about what Jesus did when he was your age. From the time he was 12 to the time he was 30. He didn't start his ministry until he didn't come into his calling until he was 30 years old. And that whole time, there's only one verse, Luke 2:52. You know what it says? Jesus grew. That's it. He grew in wisdom, stature, and favor with God, and favor with man. That's all he did. He grew into the person that he was supposed to become. And that's what we need to be placing our focus on, because our character, who we are, is more important than where we're going or what we can do. The second truth that we learn is this, that motive is more important than method. We're talking about godly leadership. Motive is more important than method. In other words, why we do something is more important than how we do it. And that's got to be at the forefront of our decisions that we make. Why we lead someone is more important than how we lead them. And Paul contrasted this severely and directly with the false teachers that were in place in the church. In Titus chapter 1, verse 10, he says they were leading out of impure motives. He says, for there are many rebellious people, these false teachers. They're full of meaningless talk and deception, especially those of the circumcision group. They must be silenced. They're disrupting whole households by teaching things that they ought not to teach. And here's why: because they're doing it for the sake of dishonest gain. They're doing it out of greed. They're just doing it to make a quick buck off the people of the church. Their motives are impure, and they need to be rebuked and removed and replaced. You see, our methods, Highlands, they can change. And I would even argue that they need to be able to adapt and change and be tweaked over time as the culture in the world around us, the environment around us changes. We need to be able to adapt and change our methods, but our motive has to stay pure. It can't ever be touched. And that leads me to this question, Highland Church, what is our motive? Why do we do the things that we do? I'll tell you this, if you go to Next Steps, you'll find out. It's why we have it on signs around our building. It's why we talk about it all the time. It's why we teach it in Next Steps. Our motive is to help people know God, find freedom, come on, you know it, discover purpose, and make a difference. That's our why. That's our motive. Know God, find freedom, discover purpose, make a difference. That's why we do everything. That's why we do small groups. That's why we serve on the Dream Team. That's why we do services on a Sunday morning. It's all to help people do those things. That's our why. Now, our methods can be tweaked and changed, and they have been, but our motive has to stay pure. Colossians 3:23 words it this way: work willingly at whatever you do. Whatever it is you're doing, I'm not worried about what you're doing, but whatever it is, I want you to do it for the right motive as though you were working for the Lord. Everything that we do is for you, God. It's all for your glory. It's all to reach people for your kingdom. Make sure your motives are in the right place. And then lastly, and we'll close with this, godly leadership teaches us this, that posture is more important than position. Posture is more important. It's not about a position or a title that we have. It's about the posture of our hearts and our lives and the way that we live. It's not, it can't come, the position can't come before the posture. And so often we seek out the position maybe without focusing on the posture of our lives, of how we're living our lives. Or how about this, and I'm guilty of this one, a lot of times we disqualify ourselves for the position because we're focused on our past instead of our posture, right? And we disqualify ourselves from it. And Paul's saying to Titus, and God would say the same thing to you, no. It's not about your past. It's not about a position that you're in. It's about the way you're living your life. It's about your posture. The bottom line is that this description of a godly leader, guys, these are characteristics that we should all be aspiring to, regardless of whether we're in a leadership position, and honestly, regardless of whether we even have the desire to be in a leadership position. This is how God has called us to live. This is how Jesus has called us to live, to posture ourselves in such a way that we live for Him. And what does this posture look like? You can see it. You see it in the book of Titus. He says that we're not to be arrogant, but humble, not quick-tempered, but patient, not drunk or excessive or violent, but self-controlled and disciplined, not greedy, but generous, and more and more and more. He's teaching us how to posture ourselves. And the same type of leaders that Titus was looking for in Crete is the same type of leaders that God's looking for today, right here in Highlands Church. It's not about being the best. It's about the way that we live our lives. And so the question is, what do we do now? Like tomorrow, what do I do? How do I start becoming and developing into a godly leader? Here's what I would say to you. Just start leading somebody. Start leading right where you're at. Wherever God has placed you. Maybe it's in your company or in your office, or maybe it's in kids' church. Maybe it's with a middle school small group. Maybe it's in your classrooms or hallways, or maybe it's right in your own living room. Wherever God has placed you, whatever that looks like, whatever your influence looks like right now, start leading there. Find somebody that you can pour into, and then focus on growing your character. Live your life in a way that honors God and that other people can see it. Check your motives. Keep them pure. Strive to help people and lead them to Jesus above all else. And then just be faithful. Be faithful in the way that you live. Don't seek fame. Seek the kingdom of God first. And allow God to be the one who raises you up. See, our posture, a lot of times it can lead to that position. And let it be that way. God's looking for faithful more than famous. So just be faithful, because we need it. Highlands Church needs it. Our student ministry and our kids' church, we need it. Your schools need it. Your offices need it. Your family needs it. Our community needs it, and our culture, we need it. We need godly leaders, and it's something we can all become. I would love for you to bow your heads, and I want to pray for you today as we get ready to close out. God's calling each of us to live our life in this way. It's not about a position that you're in. He says, no, I need you. I need you to live your life this way. Paul didn't tell Titus to go raise up go put a bunch of leaders in place and then teach them these characteristics. He said, no. Look in the church and find people who are already living this way. And those are the people we need to lead. In Highlands Church, we need to all become those people. We can all grow in these godly leadership characteristics that Paul gives us. And that's our challenge for us. And honestly, it all starts really, to be a godly leader, it starts with being a follower. It starts with putting Jesus first in your life. It starts with giving your life to him, with surrendering. In order to be a leader and to be able to lead others, you got to surrender your own control to Jesus. And I would love to give you an opportunity to do that today. If you've never done that before, whether you're here with us in person or watching online, or hey, maybe you prayed a prayer like that a long time ago, but man, your life, you've not been living it out. You've been in control of your life for far too long. And it's time to surrender that back to God. It's time to place him first. It's time to posture ourselves in a position of worship and living for Jesus so that we can teach others how to do the same. Pastor Coop talked about it earlier. The Bible says it's a real simple process. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it's simple. We confess who Jesus is in our life and our need for him, and we put our faith in him. We posture ourselves under him. Surrender it to him. And I would love to give you an opportunity to do that today. I'm not gonna embarrass you or ask you to come down to the front. I'm just gonna lead you in a prayer. And if that's you today, I would love for you to let me know. On the count of 3, just slip your hand up in the air. Nobody's looking around. If that's you, you say, I want to surrender my life to Jesus today. I need to make him Lord of my life so that I can grow as a godly leader. Here's your chance. On the count of 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Anybody in here, online, just say, that's me. I want to give my life to Jesus today. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to lead you in a prayer. And if you raise your hand, I want you to say this prayer with me. In fact, I would love for everyone to say this prayer out loud with me in support of those who are making this decision today. And say this. Say, Heavenly Father, I thank you for Jesus. Jesus, I believe that you're the Son of God, that you died on the cross for my sins, that you rose from the dead to give me new life. Today, I put my faith in you. I surrender my life to you. Forgive me for living life on my own. I give you the control. Holy Spirit, come and live in me. Give me the power to live a godly life. Thank you, God, for saving me. In Jesus' name. Now, God, I pray a prayer right now over the people of Highlands Church, over all of us. God, help us to develop into those godly leaders. God, I pray right now that as we're praying and as we're thinking, that as we think about this idea of generational leadership, I pray right now, Holy Spirit, that you would put faces and names and people in our minds and our hearts that we can pour into. I pray that there's an older couple in here right now who's they're seeing right now a young married couple that needs some help, that needs some guidance. God, I pray for divine connections within our church from generation to generation. Help us to grow as leaders. Help us to put our character first as we posture ourselves to live for you. And God, I pray a blessing over the people of Highlands Church this week as they go. That your presence would go with them, that your favor would be upon them, surround them as a shield. That you would be in their homes, in their marriages, in their parenting, in their jobs. Bless them indeed, Father, this week. We love you and we give you all of the praise today. In Jesus' name, amen. Come on, if you receive that, would you put your hands together today?